agent, the whole lot. We had to do the whole caboodle where maybe there was two of us and we had the club doctor who was part-time. Now most probably it's 15 people doing the job that two and a half of us were,
So you're physio and part-time psychologist as well.
Oh yes, psychology plays a major part. Not only with a player, but with his family.
Yeah.
Because players would ring and say, "Look, I've got a problem with my family or my wife's," and so you advise them. You're competent. And they have to trust you. And the manager, even so, you're in that unique position between the manager and the player. So you can't let the manager know too much about what the player said. So the only way you can do it is say to the manager, "Well, have you spoke to Steve today?" And they say, "Why?" "Well, look, have a word with him." So then it's up to the player to say to the manager, "Well, look, I've got a problem." Yeah.
So like go between all those, almost like a father figure.
You're a father figure, and it proves. I mean, over all them years, I never got a player fined. I never run to the manager. It was man to man. I've had a few players up against the wall in my time, but when they've really stitched me up. But usually that didn't happen too often because the senior players would look after me. They would say, "Are you okay, John?" And the thing about treating players, you have to remain the same. You can't be different every day. Yeah. If you've had a problem, it's no good going in with a grumpy attitude because you've got to treat them, and they got to relate to you. So interesting job, but a great job to have.
So, I mean, you joined Spurs in, I guess that was the beginning of '86, was it? For the '86-'87 season. Yeah. So how long before you joined Spurs? How long were you with Luton? 7 years. Okay, so and then from Luton. Obviously, we don't talk about too much about Luton because it's a Spurs podcast, even though they're my local team. But so you joined Spurs in '86 and. That year, I mean, '86-'87 was,
incredible.
in the Spurs, that was an amazing year. I thought we were going to do everything that year, and I think when you talk to certainly to older fans, when they talk they think back historically, '86-'87 is one of the years that stands out massively. So. What was that? I mean, what was that like for you to be involved in? What the players? I mean, you had some fantastic players, obviously. There, you had Clive Allen, who had a record-breaking season, and it was just like we looked like we were going to win everything, but didn't win anything. How does
It was a tremendous season, but going from Luton to Spurs, suddenly I was given a lovely blazer and slacks with the cockerel on, and all these great players that Hoddle, Waddle, all these great players. I'm now dealing with these players. I've come from Luton. I've done my apprenticeship in non-league football. You're a competent physio and joining Spurs. I think the only thing that maybe upset me was I took over from Mike Varney, who I really liked. I did say to the chairman, I don't really like anyone getting a sack. He said, "Well, he's leaving anyway, so if you don't come, we'd have to get someone else." Whether that was to pacify me or not, I don't know. But I loved the season. I found the lads were absolutely brilliant. People like Gary Mabber, all these boys. I built up a relationship quite quickly with them. Over the season, they trusted me, and I found it was quite an easy mantle to take over, and I did love it. And that season, because we were so successful, it was brilliant. And getting to the cup final, because my wish was always to run on the field at a cup final.
Mm.
Now that Coventry one was 100, wasn't it? A centenary cup final, I believe. Yeah. And I ran on the field to treat a player, and I was over the moon.
Hoddle hadn't outed you for Eileen Drury at this point.
No, I did.
Did you ever meet her?
I did meet her a few times. I mean, Glenn Hoddle said to me when I first went to Spurs, "I've got a friend that helps me with treatment." Mm-hmm. You know, she's a faith healer. What do you think?
How do you react to that? Do you mean is that something you just say I tolerate and that's okay and go with that?
No, Lee, I'm a great one for alternative medicine. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If something helps, I mean, I studied osteopathy. I used to go Friday afternoon up to Boston Place and studied osteopathy. When Gary Lineker joined Spurs, I went and done an acupuncture course at the School of Oriental Medicine, because I know that he in Barcelona, he got treated with acupuncture. Mm. So I didn't know anything about acupuncture, but I was quite happy to go up and
open-minded.
And as for Eileen Drury, I said to Glenn, look, we'll both help you get fit. You know, I've got no problems with. I mean, I believe in God anyway, so it's not a problem with.
And sometimes a lot of these things can be a mind over matter, can't they? Really,
they can, but I'm not sort of physio that's going to think that I'm the only one that can help a player, because I'm not. Mm-hmm. There's a lot better physios than me at that time. I'm sure there were, and if I could get help, you know, or a player thought, well, this is going to help me, why not use it? You know,
it certainly helps your job, doesn't it? It would help. Certainly helps your job if they feel that, you know, if you're accepting or you know happy to, you know, to listen to and get involved in those alternative medicines or alternative thoughts that would encourage that player and their recovery, you know, aid their recovery.
Can I ask you about Sorry.
See, yeah, there was things that I would stop the line at, you know, that I wouldn't sort of get involved in. But I'm very open-minded, and if I thought that it was ethical and it was going to help the player, I would try it. I would, you know. Yeah, absolutely.
That's good management, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you actually about alternative things, alternative doctors, because I'd heard a few players talk about, you know, people like Darren Anderton and others, that perhaps the medical team, in terms of the surgeons that they used at Spurs, were perhaps not always the best. And I know they'd kind of had a few issues with recovering after some of the surgery they'd had when they were at Spurs, and some of them had gone to, is it Muller-Wolf Hart? People like that. But did you have a take on what that was like at the time for Spurs? Because a few seem to have complained about it.
Well, when I was at Luton, I built up a network of surgeons, some of the best in the world, some best in the country. When I went to Spurs, I continued to use my surgeons, some of them, plus the ones that we used at Spurs that were already in situ. I always found all of them excellent. Now, when I left, I know that some of them were changed, but I don't know, you know, what happened. But I know for a fact that the surgeons that I used were top class. I mean, people like David Dandy, who was the first man to bring the arthroscopy over to this country. He was the first man to do the ACL reconstruction. I watched him in the theatre. This is the thing, Lee, when you go into the operating theatre, because you're watching the surgeon. You're watching how, and after watching hundreds of operations, you know if a surgeon's good or is. And then you've got, you know, people like Gilmore in Harley Street, that Gilmore's groin, you know, this hernia and we used him a lot. I mean, he got Paul Gascoigne playing for the Arsenal semi-final, you know, when Arsenal didn't think he was going to play. And these were top guys. These were top guys. I know Darren had problems afterwards, didn't he, after I'd left, but I don't really know too much about it. But when I went to Spurs, I was adamant with the club doctor, Dr. Curtin, and we did see eye to eye in the end that we were going to retain some of my surgeons that I trusted. I trusted completely, and I was letting them operate on me. And that's what I always used to look at. Would I let him operate on me? And I would.
I suppose in some ways it's like when you go to the States, there's half a dozen doctors all doing the same thing, but they'll recommend half a dozen different things. And, you know, depends on their, you know, what their speciality is. So in terms of, you know, them looking at one doctor and then maybe going for a different doctor, perhaps they're telling them things that they want to hear.
Well, I mean, Paul Gascoigne's rehabilitation was done at Spurs because Lazio wanted it done at Spurs under my control. But when he actually went for his fitness test in Lazio and the Olympic Stadium in Rome, they flew over Jim Andrews from America, who was the number one knee surgeon in the world, to do the fitness test on him and examine him and do the whole caboodle. So, and I believe they paid him a lot of money. But, you know, the rehab, he said, was some of the best he's ever seen, which was...
sorry, John. That the stuff like with Paul and, you know, with the knee and all that's something that you cover in your book, I think, is it?
It is, yeah. It is. I've never... See, my book, all the players that I've ever mentioned, I've asked them if I can mention their injury. So no ethical lines of being crossed, because, but unless it's been well publicised. Now with Paul, because you had the film, didn't you? The Fight Back. Did you ever see that?
I have not seen it. No,
I've not seen it. No,
you never seen it. Well, they actually followed us for the whole period of rehabilitation, and they filmed us, and it actually went out on primetime television on a Sunday evening, and it was for an hour, and it actually it showed the whole rehab and what we done, where we went, you know. So it was so his rehab was really well publicised, you know, by the media. So with Paul, I had no problems, you know, describing how I felt, you know, with that during that period of time, how it affected me mentally and physically, you know.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably available somewhere. I'll have to look that up, actually.
Yeah, it's called The Fight Back, Lee. You'll find it really interesting because it shows from his injury to the rehab and the setbacks that we had and the fitness test in Rome and when he was past fit.
Do you think conditioning has changed a lot over the years? I mean, I know recently, actually, it sounds a bit old school, but Mourinho was saying he leaves it up to the players to look after themselves because they're top pros and they should be able to. But then other managers these days seem to rely heavily on the sports science to set programs for everyone to be in tip-top shape. Has that changed over the years, or is it kind of similar now as it always has been? Or
Lee, what you got now, you've got Pacific people doing these specific jobs where it was up to me to sort out all the remedial programs, all the protocols, all the fitness training, along with the coaches. So it has changed, but also what's happened is sports medicine and that has evolved. And I mean, when you think, when I first started in league football, the only diagnostic equipment we had was my hands and an X-ray. Now you look what we've got now. We've got MRI scans, ultrasound scans. So we had to, as physios, we had to diagnose with nothing really, just our ability to examine a player in the correct manner, and an